When the wrath of the ocean breaks free from the confinement of the deep sea, the land is becoming a hunting ground for marine creatures. When deadly pathogens loom over humanity like a shadow, every breath becomes a bet between life and death. In the abyssal depths where sunlight can't reach, schools of whales are responding to some kind of mysterious call. Their gathered forms trace an unknown silhouette in the darkness. Could there be the advanced wisdom of an ocean civilization hidden there? A girl makes a desperate choice, to inject an unknown creature captured from the deep sea into her own heart. Is this the key for humanity to open a new era, or the final chapter leading to eternal doom? The answer lies beneath the turbulent waves, on the surface of the South Pacific Ocean. The morning mist has not yet dispersed. A fisherman casts his net into the azure sea. The moment the net sinks, he might still be calculating his catch for the day, but when he grabs the rope to haul in the net, a sudden enormous force erupts from under the water, like an invisible hand yanking him into the sea. He struggles to open his eyes, sees the net tangled in coral, and swims hard to try to untangle it, yet darkness surges in from all directions. Schools of fish swarm like a tide, their sharp scales glint in the water. In an instant, his figure is devoured, leaving only a wisp of fading bloodstain. At the same time, on the other side of the earth, inside the Scottish Marine Biology Research Institute, the curve on the screen suddenly breaks. Researcher Laura stares at the blank data sent back by the detector. Her fingertips tap the table unconsciously. This isn't an ordinary signal interruption. She steers the research vessel toward the coordinates of the detector. The icy seawater envelopes her. Laura finds the floating detector underwater, and yanks it free from the tangled fishing net. But when she tilts her head to surface with the detector, she finds that the ship, originally moored next to the buoy, has drifted dozens of meters away. As if pushed by an invisible force, she hurries to reattach the detector to the buoy, then swims quickly to catch up with the ship. The moment she climbs onto the ship, the thought of that calm yet eerie sea she'd glimpsed fills her with lingering fear. The next day, the repairman takes apart the detector, and says it's just a minor issue with a burnt-out circuit board. Laura looks at the repaired device, the chill of yesterday's seawater still lingering on her fingertips. Accompanied by her new boyfriend, she goes out to sea again to place the detector back in its original position. After finishing their work, the two lean on the ship's rail and chat. Her boyfriend suddenly points to the water surface. What's that? A piece of translucent ice is floating beside the ship, glowing faintly. Laura picks one up, takes out a lighter, and ignites it. A blue flame dances in the sea breeze. This is flammable ice, she explains, formed by the accumulation of dead marine algae over thousands of years. Occasionally, a few pieces float up. Before she finishes speaking, both fall silent at the same time. More and more pieces of ice are floating up from under the water, spreading out densely across the sea surface, like broken glaciers spreading across the sea. Laura grabs her camera. The sight in the viewfinder makes her fingertips tremble. This is by no means a natural phenomenon. She must send the photos back to the research institute immediately. The abnormal movements in the depths of the ocean may have exceeded the limits of human understanding. The scene shifts to a beach in Vancouver. Police discover a dead killer whale on the shore. Marine biologist Ryan infers that the killer whale has been dead for 2 to 3 hours. It has many wounds on its body, which seem to be man-made. Later, they find the nearby fishermen. The fishermen tell them that the killer whale attacked the fishing boat, as if it were insane. The fishermen had to fight back in self-defense. The fact that the killer whale, which shouldn't appear here at this season, attracts Ryan's attention. Ryan begins to observe the surrounding seabed conditions. Finally, he detects the reappearance of a pod of killer whales. He hurries to pack his things and set off. But at the same time, at a nearby port, a whale-watching boat also set off. After Ryan reached the sea surface, he lowered the detector to monitor the killer whale pod. At this moment, a humpback whale approached him from behind. It stopped, stared at Ryan for a long time, and then left. Ryan didn't pay much attention to it. He continued to observe the movements of the killer whale pod, but just as he picked up his binoculars to look, Ryan found that the whale-watching boat was right in the path of the advancing killer whale pod. He hurriedly steered his boat to go and warn them, but by this time, the humpback whale had already reached the side of the whale-watching boat. It leaped up out of the water, and then split the whale-watching boat in two. The killer whale pod closed in on them, and dragged the tourists who had fallen into the water into the depths. Ryan couldn't save everyone. Abnormal phenomena in the ocean came one after another, yet the fishermen remained active in their work. A lobster was caught and then sold to a hotel. When the chef was preparing the lobster, he was splashed all over by an unknown liquid sprayed by the lobster. The chef angrily asked his assistant to take over. However, the assistant was also splashed all over. Everyone didn't take this anomaly seriously, but after the chef got off work, he suddenly collapsed and couldn't get up on his way home, and vomited black liquid, and passed away despite rescue efforts. The doctors didn't even know what the black liquid was. Scarlett went to the hotel to learn about what had happened, in order to find out the cause of the chef's death. Then she rushed to the chef's assistant's home. The assistant was lying in the bedroom, having long stopped breathing. On the other side, after a large amount of flammable ice was found floating to the sea surface, the Marine Research Institute where Zaley worked sent a scientific research vessel to investigate. Soon they discovered that many worms were lying on the flammable ice on the seabed. The scientists took these worms back to the institute for research. After repeated dissections and observations, they found that this type of worm had never been recorded before, and their reproductive and growth capabilities were extremely strong. These worms constantly gnawed on the flammable ice on the seabed. Even after they died, the unknown substance secreted from their bodies still eroded the flammable ice. Not a single scientist could explain this. And in another sea area, marine biologist Sig was invited to board an oil exploration ship. When the oil company was exploring for oil on the seabed, they discovered a type of white worm they had never seen before. Sig told them that this type of ice worm usually lives on the seabed of the Arctic, and its reproductive rate isn't fast. But the ice worms found now have spread all over the entire sea area in just a few days, and are constantly gnawing on the flammable ice. The scientists decided to drill through the flammable ice, before the ice worms erode the flammable ice completely, to see what is actually underneath. But just when the drilling operation was halfway done, the scientific research vessel suddenly shook violently. They could only pause the operation. After returning to the laboratory, Sig and his colleagues discovered again that after the iceworms died, the holes they had drilled in the flammable ice were still expanding. On the other side, in order to find out the reason why whale pods attack humans, Ryan went to a maritime freight company. A captain told Ryan their cargo ship was attacked by a humpback whale not long ago, and even brought back many unknown mussels from the sea. The ship's hull, which was still clean before departure, was covered with mussels after the voyage. On the other side, to find out the cause of death of the chef and his assistant, Dr. Scarlett took their blood back to the laboratory for analysis. Soon she discovered that there was Vibrio vulnificus in their blood, which normal people don't have, and the reproductive rate of this bacterium is astonishing. It is obviously a new type of bacterium. At this time, a colleague told Scarlett an even worse piece of news, that other people have already been infected with this bacterium, and none of them survived. And in Vancouver, Ryan took the mussels from the cargo ship back to the laboratory for research, and found that they are a new species he had never seen before. They have sharp mouths, and ordinary mussels can't swim. At this time, a colleague also found a type of white mucus on the mussels, which seems to be an organic substance. Ryan then thought of the killer whale that died. On the beach, he applied to his superiors to dissect the killer whale. Because the killer whale is too large, the dissection was carried out on the beach. Ryan took out the killer whale's brain, and soon discovered a type of fungus in it, which is white and sticky, similar to what was found in the mussels. They suspect that there is a type of microorganism in the ocean that is changing the state of the ocean. After night fell on the surface of the South Pacific Ocean, inside an oil exploration ship, staff member Lily was recording a daily video. Suddenly, all the instruments on the ship malfunctioned, and the ship's hull shook violently. Then the huge exploration ship sank to the seabed. Meanwhile, at a port, a couple was playing and joking around. The book in their hands accidentally fell into the sea. The boy was about to fish it out, when he saw a large number of jellyfish emerging from the water. What kind of disaster are all these anomalies a sign of? Before these mysteries were solved, Dr. Scarlett learned that the hospital had admitted many more people infected with an unknown virus. She guessed that all these patients had been in contact with seafood, but her colleague denied this. Scarlett suspected that seafood and food waste had contaminated the tap water. A strong sense of anxiety came over her. Maybe the water sources of the entire city had already been contaminated, but her colleague had no time to listen to her, for the hospital corridors were filled with patients infected by the pathogen. Scarlett hurried to the supermarket and bought a lot of bottled water. She warned her family not to touch any water sources, then told her husband to take their children and leave the city. Soon, Dr. Sig handed over the report on the iceworms to the oil company. He suspected that the whales attacking humans, the jellyfish at the port, and the mussels on the cargo ships were all related to these iceworms in some way. Sato, the person in charge of the oil company, informed the president, Takuya Kimura, of the situation. After listening, Kimura said that his company had also encountered similar worms when extracting oil in the South China Sea. Sato told Kimura that their missing oil exploration ship might be related to these iceworms. Later, Sato contacted Sig and told him about the discovery of iceworms in the South China Sea. Sig had a strong sense of foreboding. At the same time, Ryan made another new discovery. He connected the locations where whales had attacked ships, and found that it was exactly the annual migration route of whales. To find out the truth, Ryan found the sea area where humpback whales sleep. He dived into the water and attached a camera to a humpback whale, but this action unexpectedly woke up the entire whale pod. Ryan immediately swam to the surface, climbed onto a boat amid the whale pod, and fled quickly. Soon,
The camera installed by Ryan transmitted footage, and the laboratory
where Laura worked also synchronized the video. In the footage, the scientists saw the sunken oil exploration ship, and what was even more surprising was that the whales were still diving continuously, which exceeded humanity's understanding of the range of whales' activities. At this moment, a light curtain resembling a galaxy appeared on the screen. The whales began to make sounds, as if communicating with some kind of creature. Not long after, on a beach in South America, a couple was being intimate when a white crab suddenly crawled onto the girl's leg. At first, neither of them took it seriously, but when they turned around, a large group of crabs was crawling onto the beach from the sea. They got on a motorcycle and tried to escape, but the entire village was soon occupied by crabs. Meanwhile, Ryan in Europe watched the footage repeatedly. They had no way of knowing what the luminous object in the deep sea was, nor did they know where the sounds communicating with the whales came from. A colleague guessed that it might be some kind of man-made secret experiment. At the same time, Dr. Scarlett and her colleague were reporting the situation of the pathogen to the mayor. What could be confirmed was that the pathogen had invaded the city's water sources, but fortunately, it didn't spread through the air. However, there was currently no drug that could combat this pathogen. Scarlett told the mayor that all fishing activities along the Atlantic coast should be stopped immediately, but the mayor believed that the city's economy was more important than Scarlett's speculation. Scarlett warned the mayor again that in all her years of researching pathogens, this was the most powerful one she had ever seen. If they allowed this Vibrio vulnificus to continue contaminating the city's water sources, it would soon be more than just the economy that was damaged. After hanging up the video call, Scarlett saw a news report on TV, stating that due to the rise in seawater temperature, a large number of crabs had invaded the land, and the number was shocking. Meanwhile, Sig and Tina, who were also worried about the ocean issue, boarded the research ship again, and went to the sea area where they had drilled before. This time, they discovered a seabed that looked like a desert. It was obvious at a glance that these were traces of human excavation. Tina from the oil company told Sig that the permit only allowed for the monitoring of natural gas and oil, and the laying of pipelines, and the traces they had just seen were clearly not for that purpose. So Sig found the doctor in charge of exploration to ask for the truth. The doctor told Sig that there was a small line in the permit stating that preparation work on the seabed was allowed before laying the pipelines, and that tools similar to those used for excavating continental slope sediments might be used for this work. If Sig reveals the truth to the public, then Tina might be made a scapegoat by the oil company. On the other side, in the laboratory where Ryan works, the doctor discovered that the mussels attached to the cargo ship have also been found on other coasts, and their genetic sequences are all the same. After she compared the mussels with the white mucus from the whale's brains, she found that both contain the same organic matter, but still doesn't know what this substance is. The doctor needs more mussel samples, so Ryan visited that port again, only to be told that the port had been closed. Ryan had to climb over the wall to get in, but was caught by security guards before he could get the mussels. Ryan was locked up. Soon, he met the person in charge of the port. The person in charge told Ryan that someone wanted to see him. After the video call was connected, on the other end was Sato, the person in charge of the oil exploration company. Ryan told Sato that they had found unknown organic matter on the mussels they brought back last time, and he needs more mussel samples for research. That cargo ship departed from Tokyo and was bound for Europe, but they have also found the same mussels in other sea areas. Sato asked about the other sea areas where the mussels were found, then let Ryan go. Ryan also took several boxes of mussels from the port back to the laboratory. Later, Sato reported this situation to Kimura. He suspects that Ryan is hiding something from them. The mutated iceworms and mussels have already posed a great threat to shipping safety. However, it's not just the iceworms and mussels. At this moment, several boxes of frozen crabs are being sent to the laboratory under strict protection. Scarlett put on a protective suit and carefully cut open the crab shells. A white sticky liquid flowed out of the crabs' bodies. Scarlett placed the mucus together with human blood. As expected, the mucus contained that Vibrio vulnificus, with an extremely high mortality rate. This type of crab has already appeared in large numbers on coasts around the world. It may not be long before the pathogen spreads to the entire human world. At the same time, Laura is watching the video recorded by her good friend before her death. Her good friend worked on that missing oil exploration ship, and has now sunk to the seabed along with the ship. Just as Laura was immersed in sorrow, she suddenly noticed a strange light curtain appearing outside the cabin window in the video, accompanied by a certain strange sound. This reminded her of the video transmitted from the seabed not long ago. Laura compared the sound waves of this audio with the sound waves of the communication with whales on the seabed, and soon found that the two sets of sound waves are almost identical. Laura told Sig and the doctor about this discovery. The sinking of the ship must be related to this strange sound. She proposed sending an underwater robot to dive into the sea to investigate thoroughly. However, the doctor didn't agree. After hanging up the phone, Sig went out to find the doctor and talk with her. Finally, the doctor agreed with what Laura said and lent the underwater robot to her. With Sig taking it there, The news reported that due to the invasion of land by marine organisms, the International Marine Conservation Association urgently held an expert meeting. Sig called Sato, expressing his desire to participate in this meeting, because the recently appearing iceworms, jellyfish, and crabs must have some connection between them. This statement reminded Sato of Ryan. He told Sig that a new type of mussel has recently appeared, which is reproducing at an amazing rate and seriously affecting shipping. Sig proposed communicating with Ryan. Soon, Ryan called Sig. Ryan told him that it's not just the mussels, the whales have also exhibited many abnormal behaviors. The white mucus they found in the mussels and whales contains more than 100 types of molecular compounds, which are commonly found in mammals and bivalves. Ryan said he could share this data with Sig. After ending the phone discussion, Sig returned home. He met Tina, who had been waiting for a long time. Tina had already resigned from the company. She came to say goodbye to Sig. She felt guilty for not discovering the company's seabed destruction behavior in time. Just as Tina was about to leave, Sig mustered up the courage to confess his love to her, and asked to get back together. But Tina only said goodbye and left. Soon, Sig received the data shared by Ryan. He watched the video recorded by the camera attached to the whale, and found that after the whale chirped, the light curtain made a rustling sound in response to them. He sent the video to his colleagues in the laboratory, but the colleagues also didn't know what substance the light curtain specifically is. The colleague told Sig his guess, that the sinking of the ship was caused by submarine hydrothermal vents. Hydrothermal vents can essentially be understood as submarine volcanic craters, formed due to tectonic movements, and some people believe that it is the source of all life on Earth. After the meeting ended, Sig took a helicopter to the lighthouse where Laura was located. They handed the robot to Laura, and asked her to give them the footage from the underwater robot as soon as possible once she got it. After having a brief conversation with Laura, Sig returned to the helicopter. At this moment, he received a call from the doctor. In the sea area not far from them, a tsunami was forming, and was rushing towards the coastline where they were at an extremely fast speed. The doctor told Sig to take shelter in a high place. On another beach, Tina was waiting for her newly dating boyfriend to arrive. Suddenly, a large flock of seagulls flew from the sea surface to the land. Shortly after that, the seawater along the coastline receded rapidly. Tina realized that this was a sign of the upcoming tsunami. She hurried to run to the parking lot, and her boyfriend just arrived at the parking lot. He looked at the fleeing crowd in the oncoming tsunami, ignoring Tina's pleas for help. He drove away to escape for his life. When Tina got into her own car, it was already too late for her to leave. In her final moments of life, she dialed her ex-boyfriend Sig's phone number, but no one answered. She then left a message for Sig, expressing her unfulfilled love. After receiving the doctor's call, Sig took Laura onto the helicopter, and flew into the sky the second before the tsunami engulfed the land. Sig, who returned home safely at night, turned on his phone. He opened the voicemail box. After hearing Tina's message, he became more determined to investigate the ocean's anomalies thoroughly. Not long after that, Scarlett held a meeting. She told the experts and representatives that the first place where crabs landed was the coast of Japan. The pathogens they carried had contaminated every type of water source from the very beginning. 40% of the world's population lives in coastal areas. The invasion of the pathogen will lead to the largest scale population displacement in history, and so far, it is still unknown where this pathogen comes from. But these pathogens have no other function except to contaminate water sources and cause humans to die a terrible death. A representative questioned whether Scarlett's implication was that these crabs were deliberately contaminating water sources. Scarlett didn't give a clear answer. She said that this was what could be seen from the current data. Sig saw Scarlett's press conference through the news. After contacting Sato, he obtained Scarlett's contact information. During their online video call, Scarlett told Sig she suspected that the successive anomalies appearing in marine organisms were a kind of strategy, and the other party was still constantly adjusting the strategy. At first, the pathogen-carrying lobsters were caught and brought ashore, but now the crabs all rush ashore by themselves. After a series of disasters, a large number of people living by the sea moved inland. Ryan came to the pier and saw an old man still handling the fish he had caught. The old man told Ryan that he had lived by the sea all his life, and didn't know where to go if he left the sea. Soon, Sig gathered Ryan, Scarlett, Laura, and others together through Sato. Sig believed that the mutated iceworms and mussels, the pathogen-carrying lobsters and crabs, and the whales with abnormal behaviors, there seemed to be some kind of intelligence controlling it behind all this. Scarlett said that this might be the ocean's response to human beings' evil deeds, but Laura's teacher, a female doctor, couldn't accept such an absurd guess. She had spent most of her life studying the ocean, and had never found any high-intelligence organisms. If Sig and the others' guess were correct, then all her research would be overturned. She chose to withdraw. Laura didn't understand why her teacher valued reputation so much. She believed that what should be valued was the future of humanity, rather than her own research achievements. But her teacher told her that if she wanted people to believe what she said she needed reputation, and such a risky endeavor usually doesn't end well. After discussion, SIG made their guess public. All the anomalies of marine organisms ultimately point to human beings, especially those living in coastal areas. SIG guessed that these marine organisms were deliberately driving humans away from the ocean. SIG named the unknown intelligent life behind this IL. But to study and clarify the underlying reasons behind this requires funds and equipment. He hoped to gain the support of the committee to seek the truth, but as expected, no one supported their research at the meeting. Not only were the research funds not secured, but the capitalists also dug up SIG's past scandals and humiliated him. After the meeting ended, a linguist named Munsa found them. Munsa said that since the occurrence of ocean anomalies, she had been paying attention to the development of the incident, and had already discovered sounds similar to those emitted by the light curtain. At the South Pole and the North Pole, she was verifying this with colleagues stationed in other countries. At Ryan's invitation, Munsa also joined their research. Switching scenes, Kimura found SIG through Sato. Kimura had seen all of SIG's speech at the meeting. After the outbreak of various disasters, he had been paying attention to the connections between these anomalies. He also wanted to know the reason behind this. In addition, he was preparing to invest in a scientific research project. Kimura stated that he was willing to provide the funds and ships needed for the research. All along, he had been making money from the ocean. Now that the time had come when he was needed, he would do his best to make amends for the ocean. With Kimura's support, SIG gathered the other 6 people together. They would set off for the most dangerous sea area within 48 hours. Once they boarded the research vessel, they would most likely lose all contact with the land. This unknown exploration is full of dangers. He was also not sure whether the mission would succeed. Each person needed to board the ship with the determination to face the possibility of not returning. Over the next 48 hours, they would say goodbye to their relatives and friends. After arriving at the Arctic Ocean, the seawater near the research vessel seemed to start boiling. In the cabin, the team members constantly monitored the sounds transmitted by the seabed detector. They found that these sounds were concentrated at the North and South Poles. SIG said that just like every kind of intelligent creature, Illinois should have its own living territory. If IL has its own breeding area, these 2 places are the most likely ones. Ryan said that to ensure survival and reproduction, the living range of marine organisms generally doesn't exceed a depth of 5,000 meters. At this point, Laura said that there was a melted iceberg in the Arctic Ocean, and the ship could already reach the Malloy Deep, with a depth of exactly around 5,000 meters, and that was also where the IL signal they detected was the strongest. Those executing this mission included not only experts from various fields such as SIG, but also Annie, a journalist sent by Kimura. She would record the entire process of the mission's execution. As soon as she boarded the ship, she started interviewing the team members. The first was linguist Munsa. Munsa told Annie that since IL could emit such sound waves, they could modify the sound waves and send them back. In this way, there might be a possibility of communication between the 2 sides, but it might also provoke an attack from the other side. Munsa extracted all the sound waves that IL had emitted. She found that one segment of the wavelength was similar to a baby's cry, so Munsa added the sound of a human baby crying to it. They prepared to send this sound to the seabed. If IL emits different sound waves next, it might mean that it has already received the human signal. Meanwhile, biologist SIG and medical scientist Scarlett were still researching those mutated marine organisms. Their nervous systems have been altered by IL. They wanted to find a way to reverse this alteration. After conducting experiments, Scarlett discovered that the glutamate levels in the nerve cells of these organisms were abnormally high. This substance would make their nerves extremely excited. Scarlett suspected that IL had injected glutamate into their bodies to control them, thus forming a massive army of marine organisms. After arriving near the Malloy Deep, they lowered their ocean exploration vessel into the sea. The vessel continuously played the sound provided by Munsa on a loop. Shortly after James and Laura piloted it towards the deep sea, something strange appeared on the sonar radar. At the same time, the research ship also detected a strange sound. The instruments on the research ship were all affected by the sound waves, but consistent with Munsa's speculation, the sound wave was different from the previous ones. Suddenly, the communication between the exploration vessel and the research ship was cut off. From the sonar reading, that strange mass was approaching them. The captain kept trying to contact Laura, but to no avail, so they turned off the ship's communication systems, yet still could receive that sound wave. The 2 people on the exploration vessel waited for a long time, but received no instructions. Their intuition told them they should return immediately. Finally, the exploration vessel returned to the research ship. Just before leaving the seabed, Laura saw that not far from them, a mysterious light curtain had appeared. Munsa took the sound wave just collected, and compared it with the previous ones. She found that the frequency of the entire sound wave had not changed much, only the modified baby cry segment had changed. This indicated that IL could understand their message and respond to it. Perhaps it was also trying to contact humans. At the same time, James and Annie, who were inspecting the exploration vessel at the bottom of the cabin, found something glowing in the water. As she approached it, the ship's power suddenly went out completely. When the power was restored, A few minutes later, Annie had collapsed to the ground. She was taken to the medical room. Scarlett found that cerebrospinal fluid was flowing from Annie's nasal cavity, which indicated that her brain or spinal cord had sustained severe damage. Scarlett initiated emergency treatment for her. On the other side, Munsa told everyone that during the ship-wide power outage just now, the monitor had detected an audio frequency inaudible to the human ear, and it had been confirmed that the sound came from inside the research ship. Analysis of the sound wave revealed that it was stronger and more urgent than ever before. Even more terrifyingly, this meant that if the message IL conveyed was malicious, no one on the entire research ship would survive. However, no matter how hard the technicians searched, they couldn't find any abnormal equipment on the research ship, which meant that it had evaded all human detection. At this moment, in the medical room, red rashes broke out all over Annie's body, yet Scarlett had no idea what was causing it. She could only extract Annie's cerebrospinal fluid for research, but right now, they were as isolated as a lone boat on the research ship. If there was a mistake in the procedure, the damage to Annie would be irreversible. Fortunately, Scarlett successfully extracted Annie's cerebrospinal fluid. After conducting dialysis research on it, Scarlett discovered that Annie's cerebrospinal fluid actually contained Vibrio vulnificus, the same strain found in lobsters and crabs, but unexpectedly, the Vibrio vulnificus in Annie's body wasn't devouring her healthy cells, but rather trying to fuse with her cells. It had altered Annie's nervous system in some way, just like those mutated marine organisms. This meant that Annie had come into contact with it. For everyone's safety, Sig proposed sealing off the area where Annie had collapsed. Later, they reported the latest developments to Kimura. At this moment, Munsa also came up with a new method. She cross-sectioned the wavelength of the sound, then stitched these images together, forming a diagram of human evolution. Munsa planned to send this sound wave to IL to communicate with it. Munsa and Sig speculated that among the lifeforms nurtured by the ocean, two types of high-level intelligent organisms may have evolved, one being humans, and the other possibly IL, which they were now facing. Just as they were conducting further research, Laura went to the cabin where Annie had the incident. While investigating, the next sight left her utterly horrified. The water inside the diving cabin was emitting a dazzling light. As the light grew increasingly intense, the light formed the shape of a starfish. At this moment, the sound they emitted was detected by Ryan again. They were astonished to discover that Illinois not only understood their message but also responded in the same way. When the cross-sectional images of the sound wave it responded with were combined, they formed a map of the primordial continent from 250 million years ago. Next, Laura at the bottom of the cabin saw the light form the shape of a squid and swim freely in the water. Gradually, the shapes became more diverse. Illinois seemed to be telling them that it could take any form. Right after the light curtain appeared, the research ship was surrounded by several humpback whales. But this time, they didn't come to attack the research ship. The humpback whales seemed to want to tell the crew members on the ship some information, but no one could understand their meaning. After learning about this, the behind-the-scenes boss Kimura finally could no longer hold back. He took a helicopter to the research ship to join the operation. Sig told everyone that he had discovered that IL was a group of single-celled organisms. It could constantly divide and combine to form a huge cell cluster, while at the same time changing its shape and density to transform into the form of other organisms. At this moment, Munsa displayed the cross-sectional images of sound waves captured last night. When combined, they formed the form of the ocean from 250 million years ago, when the continents had not yet separated. That is to say, an image of the supercontinent period. Illinois conveyed to them an image of Panthalassa, telling them that it came from the ocean 200 million years ago, and that it had also recorded the form of Panthalassa at that time. Through this information, they could confirm that Illinois either has survived from 200 million years ago to the present, or there is inheritance or collective memory among them. Laura said that IL might be telling them that it has always existed and has existed for a longer time than humans. Humans also evolved from the ocean. Perhaps IL and humans share a common ancestor. Illinois is now trying to communicate with them. It may just want to prevent humans from continuing to damage the ocean, because it didn't attack the research ship as it did before. However, the information they have now is still very limited. After a series of studies, the team members still can't figure out why IL attacked Annie. Laura guessed that perhaps it didn't intend to attack Annie, but rather wanted to enter a human body to understand humans. It had not made such an attempt before, possibly because IL, which lives on the seabed, didn't know that humans are intelligent. At this moment, Munsa asked if IL is made aware that humans are intelligent beings. Will it want to exterminate humans, and will it bring devastating consequences to humans? However, Laura couldn't answer these questions. They could only extract seawater containing IL cells from the diving cabin pool and take it back to the laboratory for research. On the other side, Ryan planned to send the calls of humpback whale calves to IL. Since IL can communicate with whales, then they might be able to convert what they want to say into whale language, and then send it to IL. Humans have banned the hunting of humpback whales since the 1960s. From only 500 left worldwide to now 25,000, this is one of the few good things humans have done for the ocean. Ryan hopes to tell IL through this that humans can change. At the same time, Scarlett was conducting research on samples of seawater in the cabin. She discovered that ketamine can kill a large number of IL cells. Ketamine can block pain signals in the brain and cause distortion in vision and hearing. It is a commonly stocked painkiller in hospital emergency departments. Humans only die when taking a large dose of this drug. Kimura asked if ketamine could be used to deal with IL. This proposal was undoubtedly a surprise for the research team. They had always only wanted to communicate with IL and had not thought about killing it. Scarlett wasn't sure. She had only conducted experiments with a small number of IL cells in a petri dish. Someone suggested that an experiment could be conducted in the pool at the bottom of the cabin. At this moment, Sig interrupted their conversation. Sig believed that having just started trying to communicate with IL, they were already planning how to kill it. This approach was inappropriate, but the captain brought up the frequent tsunamis recently, which were most likely caused by IL. They had already tried peaceful communication, but IL still attacked the coasts with tsunamis. Sig believed that harming IL would cause greater harm to the ocean. If humans lose the ocean, then humans will also become extinct. When the two sides were locked in a dispute, Kimura said that if IL knew humans had a weapon capable of killing it, it might be beneficial for the negotiations. Scarlett also hoped to first conduct an experiment in the pool to confirm whether it could be used as a deterrent tool. Ryan and Munsa also agreed with this approach. After all, humans had to consider the future of their own species, so Scarlett began preparing for the experiment, and everyone gathered by the pool at the bottom of the cabin. Laura looked at the pool and sighed. She believed IL was friendly to them and had no intention of intentionally harming them, but she had no evidence to convince others. At this moment, Scarlett and James had already entered the cabin fully armed. She walked to the pool and dropped a single drop of ketamine into the water. In an instant, all the IL cells in the water appeared and gathered together. The ship's lights began to flicker, and amid a deafening roar, a massive water column rose from the surface. The roar grew more and more agonizing, as if it were IL's death throes. At the same time, all systems on the research ship collapsed, and everyone fell to the ground unconscious. When Scarlett woke up again, James had fallen into the water and stopped breathing. The ship's power systems had all failed, yet the research ship moved eerily and crashed into an iceberg. The light curtain surrounded the research ship and moved it horizontally. Faced with the light curtain's retaliation, the captain wanted to pour ketamine directly into the sea to deal with IL, but Sig objected. A single drop of ketamine had already caused such consequences, and the ocean contained more than 1.35 billion cubic meters of seawater. Not to mention whether humans could even produce that much ketamine. A conflict with IL would be a Pyrrhic victory. Humanity's only hope was to forge peace, but the biggest problem now was figuring out how to let IL know they didn't intend to kill it. Now all systems on the ship were paralyzed, and Munsa couldn't send sound waves. Looking at the light curtains gathering around the research ship, Sig proposed that Laura pilot the submarine to take James, who had been seriously injured by IL, down to the deep sea, then inject IL cells into James' heart, just as IL had entered Annie's body in an attempt to fuse with her. This way IL would be able to feel humanity's goodwill. But before anyone could act, the research ship was dragged toward an iceberg. Numerous icebergs surrounded them and trapped them. They had to evacuate as soon as possible. Everyone sprang into action. They prepared to use a helicopter to first evacuate the seriously ill Annie, and soon the helicopter took off successfully. Munsa also restarted the equipment. Now their only hope was James. Laura piloted the exploration vessel and dove into the seabed again with James on board. As the diving depth increased, more and more light curtains swarmed toward the exploration vessel. At this time, Munsa was also continuously sending friendly signals to IL. Looking at the light curtain in front of her, Laura felt an overwhelming sense of familiarity. It was as if she and IL were intimate friends. Laura told her companions on the ship that James had been dead for too long to convey sincerity. She wanted to inject IL's cells into her own heart and be the one to make contact with IL. So she entered the diving cabin alone and injected IL's cells into her heart. Then she opened the cabin door, and seawater slowly poured into the cabin. Laura trembled all over with fear. The seawater carried her to the seabed, and then the light curtain enveloped her. More and more light particles entered her body. Just when everyone thought Laura had sacrificed herself, the icebergs trapping the research ship dispersed. Not long after, the seawater carried Laura to a beach. She opened her eyes. Was she still human at this moment, or had she become an entirely new species? And with that, the entire series comes to an end. The German sci-fi series The Swarm is adapted from Frank Schatzing's best-selling novel Der Schwarm. It set a record for the highest production cost in German television history, with a budget of 40 million euros. Moreover, with its grim marine thriller narrative, it provokes reflections on the ultimate contradiction between humans and nature. This 8-episode series blends ecological disaster, scientific mystery, and philosophical contemplation. Though it has faced criticism regarding its pacing, Its profound themes and visual impact still make it an unmissable sci-fi work of 2023. The series centers on an advanced marine civilization called IL, a collective intelligence formed by the aggregation of single-celled organisms. It has existed 250 million years longer than humans,
and passes down its history through genetic memory. When human destruction of the ocean, including oil extraction, trawling, and pollution,
discharge, threatens its habitat, Illinois manipulates marine organisms to launch systematic retaliation in the face of intelligence superior to that of humans, and before the wrath of the ocean, human life appears so fragile and insignificant. Killer whales sink fishing boats, lobsters release deadly Vibrio vulnificus, mussels clog cargo ships, iceworms decompose methane and trigger tsunamis. From Peruvian fishing villages to French restaurants, and from Canadian cargo ships to Norwegian oil platforms, multiple incidents reveal a global disaster caused by the collapse of the ecological chain. This setting breaks away from the traditional alien invasion framework, portraying the antagonist as an indigenous guardian of nature on Earth. Its revenge logic directly targets the arrogance of anthropocentrism. The series uses extensive underwater photography to convey the profundity and sense of oppression of the deep sea. The circular vortex where schools of fish devour fishermen. The shot of whale pods standing like stone pillars and staring. The apocalyptic scene of South African beaches flooded with white crabs. All use restrained cinematography to convey silent fear, while depicting disasters. The series also showcases different attitudes of humans when facing nature. Scientists focus on peaceful communication with nature, as they better understand that humans and the ocean share a life and death fate.
However, politicians prioritize human interests, unwilling to put
capital at risk, even if it concerns the survival of all humanity. There are also those who want to exploit disasters to fulfill their personal heroism, and ordinary people who are too busy saving themselves to care for others in the face of disasters, revealing the most inherent weaknesses of human nature. The most memorable character in the entire series is Laura. Her father and close friend both died in maritime disasters, yet she deeply loves the ocean. With her keen insight and unique empathy, she ultimately achieves peaceful communication with IL. The flaws of the swarm can't overshadow its ambition. It uses science fiction as a forum for debating ecological ethics, wrapping a critique of civilization within a thriller exterior. Although the unbalanced narrative weakens its impact, when swarms of crabs pour into cities on screen, and whale carcasses float on oil-polluted seas, the real-world stagnation of the North Atlantic Current and coral bleaching events form a cruel echo of these scenes. Humanity's understanding of the ocean is far less than that of outer space, yet we arrogantly believe we have conquered it. This line is perhaps the soul and footnote of the entire series. Perhaps the true swarm isn't IL, but humanity itself. When will we awaken to become cohabitants of the earth rather than conquerors?